In this world, everyone has the opportunity to become a god. Anyone can be classified with their divine power into the following categories: divine creatures, demigods, true gods, principal gods, and god kings. When a person comes of age at 18, they awaken in the divine realm and then enter their own main clan. The clans also have different levels, and talented people can enter a clan with greater potential, later evolving into superior gods. Hanwoo is one of those people who awakened to the divine realm, but received only the lowest possible residue level. The story begins in a high school, where a bully is fighting with the protagonist, saying, "How dare he speak that way," and claiming he has never lost before, so he must hand over the divine power, otherwise, he will have his divine domain core destroyed. This bully is named Jung Bin and is a powerful assassin at the school, with 5,000 members in his main army. Hanwoo responds that there is no divine power, and that if he has one, then it depends solely on him to take it. The protagonist says that Jung Bin is nothing more than a mere member of the Locust clan. This makes him reflect on why on earth he is challenging the school bully, and it all started days ago when he traveled to the divine realm, where everyone can become gods. He imagines that the owner of that body is a scoundrel, a pitiful creature who awakened to the divine realm at 18 years of age but received only the Locust clan. A bedridden person tells Hanwoo that his parents are lost in the chaos of the Imperial College and are probably still alive, so if an opportunity arises in the future, he should try to find them. He also remembers when a girl named Qin Shuang asked him if he was willing to become her slave and provide enough locusts to feed her Thunderbird every day. She would ensure he graduated from high school, so he should think very carefully about it. Meanwhile, the bullies order him to always provide 100 divine powers on Monday at school, and if he doesn't, he will have to deal with the dwarf army invading and killing his entire clan, thus ruining his bright future. All of this makes the protagonist ponder how he could start this game on Hell difficulty, and in this way, if he continues in the Locust clan, he will never be able to enter the best Imperial universities, much less find his missing parents. This makes him think that his top priority right now is to pass the Yellow Knights massacre, but that's not his style. He enters the machine and puts on the accessory, saying that everyone managed to get where they are, so giving up without even trying is pathetic. With this in mind, he decides to connect to the divine domain until a notification appears that the login was successful. He is surprised, as that world is vast. He observes for a moment and notices the thousands of locusts from his main clan. He opens his system screen to check some of his data, see if there have been any updates, and says that according to his past life's memories, it seems there are only two options: the chosen son and the life sacrifice, and he is confused about what the difference between the two is. Asking the system what it is about, the chosen son of heavenly selection is one chosen by heaven to bring good luck. For each level raised, an additional ability with unique attributes is obtained. Meanwhile, the life sacrifice can sacrifice his biological life in exchange for products of equal value. The exchange products are generated randomly during the sacrifice process. This makes him thoughtful, as the chosen son of heaven should be his golden finger. Meanwhile, the life sacrifice is an additional ability he will acquire with unique attributes during the divine biological stage. Thus, with these incredible powers, he will be able to work hard to fulfill his grandfather's last wish. However, his biggest concern at the moment is to get through the school bully's blackmail the next day. At this moment, he notices something on his system screen, as there was a lot of additional information. He observes all the benefits listed in the system until he finally understands how it works. With this in mind, he decides to take a high risk, and if he wins, he wants the system to become his master. But if he loses, it will be a complete waste. The next day arrives, and already at school, Qin Shuang walks up to the protagonist's table, asking if he has thought about becoming her slave, making it clear that she will ensure no one will bully him until he graduates from high school. Hanwoo says his answer is no, leaving her indignant as she doesn't understand why he gave that answer. After all, without her protection, he will be massacred to death by some group of people. He smiles and says that maybe that is the situation. However, although he has no power or influence, he still has his own dignity, and despite understanding that she wants to protect him, he will not accept any of it. She turns around and says he will regret this situation. He takes a deep breath, but then the group of bullies approaches his table, asking if he brought the 100 divine powers they asked for, and if he doesn't deliver soon, he will deeply regret it. The protagonist tells them to stop bothering him, which makes Jungbin furious, as it seems he is crazy to talk like that, and if he doesn't hand over the divine powers now, he will have his domain core destroyed. He responds that he wants to see him try. The bully is surprised as Hanwoo is tougher that day, and it's hard to understand why. He also looks to the side and notices that Qin Shuang seems not to intervene. The other students start shouting for them to fight in the game. After all, they have never seen what a broken core looks like. One of them also says that the Locust clan is always dropping in level, so it will be easy to eliminate him and make him leave the school. They say that Jungbin's dwarf army can rank among the top 60 in the school, so it will be amazing to see that. The bully takes his card and tells the protagonist that he is looking for death, so later he can't blame him for not giving him a chance. Besides, he says that to deal with trash, he doesn't need to use more than 10 divine points. This is the intrusion card worth 10 divine power points. After blocking the target, a spatial teleportation portal will be generated within the target's divine domain, thus being able to invade the divine domain. Hanwoo immediately flies through the portal until he finally arrives in the divine realm. He stands before a giant door, wondering what it could be. Suddenly, it opens, and inside he can see numerous dwarves with a gloomy look. At the top of the gate stands the bully, saying that in the name of the dwarf god, he orders his army to destroy the fragile locusts until they finally destroy the divine core. With this order, the monsters start shouting excitedly. The other students can watch the fight on a screen projected by the system. They notice that the dwarf army is bigger than before, and probably the strength is already equivalent to the top 50. Another student disagrees, saying that each dwarf is equipped with an iron weapon, so the current strength is equivalent to at least the top 30. They also notice that there are elite-level life forms, and now Hanwoo will have no chance of winning. Qin Shuang observes this battle closely and notices the protagonist summoning his army of locusts. People are surprised, as they don't know what those red-colored insects are, and notice that they are explosive locusts, an elite life form, and as far as they knew, they were supposed to be common locusts. They didn't imagine there were elite-level explosive locusts, and there are many of them. Another student says that it doesn't matter, as even being elite, the combat power won't match that of the common dwarves. After all, trash is trash. The locusts fly towards the dwarves, causing a huge explosion shortly afterward. The protagonist smiles and remembers the previous day when he invoked a huge magic circle, as he was determined to make a big bet. He wanted to retain 10 million adults to maintain racial continuity, and the remaining 2,490,000,000 locusts were all sacrificed. With that, his magic circle is activated, creating a kind of pink fire, and within this fire were the sacrificed locusts. Then the system presents 3 options. The first is 10,000 elite goblin warriors. The second is the Eye of Life, capable of continuously emerging from the source of life to nurture and improve the surroundings. And lastly, a level 1 artifact, Explosive Heart. This makes him reflect that after the divine core, there is a certain chance of giving birth to contain explosions. The clan core gives the option of power division of the 10,000 goblin warriors, which will certainly solve the current crisis. But unfortunately, it is a disposable item, so it will not be able to handle a future crisis. The second option, the Eye of the Source of Life, seems like a long-term investment, but it will not be able to handle the bullying the next day. With that said, he decides to choose the third option, as it is an investment in the main clan, and has a sustainable impact, being the only plausible option to choose. An ice stone appears in front of him, making him grab and destroy it with his hand. An energy emerges until the appearance of the explosive locust, an elite creature that can cause explosions. It has no wisdom, obeying only the commands of the gods. It has a life cycle of 180 days. He grabs one in his hand and throws it forward, causing a gigantic explosion. This makes him realize that such power will not kill a common dwarf, but considering the quantity, the story might be different. The smoke from the explosion dissipates until the audience asks how the war situation is, as they can't see anything anymore. The dwarves are all on the ground, except for the elite dwarf. He is holding his stomach due to the injuries, but managed to withstand the explosions. In front of him is Hanwoo, with his army of red locusts. Qin Shuang comments that it has become quite interesting now. The protagonist orders his locusts to attack the standing dwarf, but Jung Bin shouts for the surviving dwarves to return immediately to the divine realm. He laughs and says that it is too late to want to retreat now, and imagines that his entire clan will cross the portal to invade the bully's divine realm. Immediately, all of them fly towards the portal, creating a huge explosion shortly thereafter. Jung Bin becomes furious, asking to send the locusts away from his realm. However, it is already too late, and the explosions start to finish them off one by one. He says he gives up the fight and therefore asks to remove the locusts from his realm so the dwarves can return. The protagonist smiles and asks if he wouldn't have his core destroyed, as that was the threat he heard earlier. Since that's the case, it's only fair to destroy his core. This makes him even more irritated to the point of saying that his parents will not let this go unpunished, as both are demigods. He smiles again and says he doesn't care about that, and orders the red locusts to attack the core within that realm. Jung Bin despairs to the point of crying and begs to stop, admitting defeat and even promising never to bully him again in the future, and if there are any other conditions, he will fulfill them. But all he asks is not to destroy his core. He says he doesn't care about any of that and just wants to destroy it for everything he has done so far. At that moment, he hears a voice in his head saying he has done enough and to stop in his name. The voice is from Professor Liu, asking to stop. After all, the fight already has a winner. Jung Bin begs the professor to help him stop that madman who wants to kill him. However, it is of no use, and the locusts continue to approach the core and start to crack it bit by bit. He becomes increasingly weaker as he asks to be saved. Liu calls the protagonist's attention, asking if he heard what he said about stopping. Hanwoo smiles and decides to ask why a teacher is there. He says he is a class teacher, so it is natural for him to feel everything that happens in that school. The protagonist decides to ask another thing now, since he feels everything that is happening. Why did he never appear when he himself was being beaten by the bully, extorted, and even intimidated? Why didn't he intervene at those times? He gets irritated with the question since Hanwoo doesn't even have demigod parents, so helping him would be like offending Jung Bin's family. With this in mind, he responds that he will explain this matter as soon as he stops the attacks. He decides to ask one last question, saying that if his own divine realm core were being attacked instead of Jung Bin's, would he have intervened to help? The teacher remains silent, not knowing what to answer, but Hanwoo asks him not to worry about it, as he already knows the answer. He says this, and his red locusts explode on the class bully's core, making him cry for having his divine realm destroyed. After that, the protagonist asks the teacher to please leave his divine realm. With that, the screen showing the fight is turned off. Jung Bin lies on the ground, frustrated, saying that it's all over, and now he is nothing but a cripple. The teacher runs to the classroom, calling for Hanwoo. A student responds that he has already gone home, as he didn't appear after the fight. This makes him furious, imagining that he should be expelled for what he did. Meanwhile, inside the protagonist's divine realm, he requests a battle report, and the system reports that, at the moment, there are 18,090 self-destructive locusts and 4,050,643 common locusts. Seeing this, he thinks that he needs to cultivate more self-destructive locusts for the future. In his possession is the fragment of Jung Bin's divine realm, which he can now use to merge with his own. With this in mind, he activates the ability to merge, emanating enormous energy from the fragment. The system informs the details of the current Divine Realm area and that the level has risen to 2. This evolution makes him happy, as it was not bad and should last at least until graduation. However, something still worries him as Jungbin threatened him, saying his parents will not let this slide, and that is a problem since both are demigods. To make matters worse, the teacher is on the bully's side, so the school will not protect him, meaning he needs to get stronger as quickly as possible. He decides to sell the iron dwarf hammer he won in the battle, hoping to find someone who wants to trade for good items. He notices that someone quickly appears wanting to accept the trade and offers the item Fire Crystal Lava. This reminds him that this fire crystal can increase the fire resistance of the familiar, as well as enhance explosive power. With this in mind, he decides to accept the trade, as with this item, the self-destructive locusts can evolve again. The fragment begins to overflow with enormous energy, slightly changing the structure of the locusts. They remain elite creatures, but their talents are lava explosion. The reproduction capacity is 20 times higher, and they have a lifespan of 250 days. He grabs one in his hand and throws it forward to test. A stronger explosion than the previous ones occurs in front of him, making him excited, as that explosion level is equivalent to a grenade. Plus, it has a lava splash effect. With this, it will cause enormous area damage. This makes him think that he basically has a bunch of highly explosive grenades. At school, inside the principal's office, Jungbin's father's shouts for explanations can be heard, as his son had his Divine Realm core broken, and now there is no possibility of remodeling it. Dean tries to explain what happened and says that the battle was caused by his son, and there are several records of rule violations, as well as bullying in the classroom. He becomes furious as his son had the core destroyed, and the school does not want to take responsibility. After all, if this happened, it was the teacher's fault. Jungbin's mother joins the conversation, saying that the student who did this deserves to be punished, and not only that, but he should also be expelled immediately. Hanwoo continues training his locusts, asking to use growth acceleration to regenerate some explosive locusts. At this moment, Principal Dean calls the protagonist, making him worried as the worst is yet to come. He answers the call, and she says that it is Principal Shu and needs to tell him something. She explains that Jungbin's parents went to the school and are asking for him to be punished for what he did, and tells him about the conversation with them. The student's mother was furious, demanding that the protagonist be expelled immediately. Dean explained that after an investigation, they discovered that it was their own son who initiated the invasion of the Divine Realm, and that Hanwoo only won using his own strength, without any cheating. With that said, there are no grounds for his expulsion. She became furious to the point of asking if the school was really going to try to cover up for a bad student who goes around destroying his classmates' cores. The principal asked her not to distort the facts. After all, Hanwoo has always been an excellent student who follows the rules. Moreover, the school has plenty of evidence that their son bullied him multiple times. She, already enraged, said she just wanted to know if they were going to expel him or not. Dean apologized, stating that this would not be possible. Jungbin's father began to emanate a tremendous power, saying that he might accept that the school would not punish Hanwoo severely, but as revenge, he would vent his anger, and said that if they refused to agree with what he was about to say, then he would no longer consider the school's reputation. The principal, explaining all this to the protagonist, concluded by saying that Jungbin's father also threatened to send a legion of 1,000 men to invade his divine realm, regardless of the outcome, and informing him of this was the most the school could do to protect him. After all, a legion of 1,000 men from a demigod is enough to be more than an army of 50,000 ordinary students. With that said, she asked if he would be able to handle the situation. He thanked the principal for her help and said he would go to the school the next day to face this challenge. With that, he ended the video call and imagined that he needed to hurry to become stronger So it was time to launch the second sacrifice. Again, he activated his power, initiating the sacrifice of a few billion more locusts until an enormous volcano erupted due to the presence of such power. The system again presented three options. The first was a level 1 sacred artifact. The second option was a level 1 skill crystal, the fireball. And lastly, the familiar Jianfeng. Reading the options, he thought that having a treasure in exchange for 4,800,000,000 locusts was not bad. He decided to choose the third option. A familiar appeared in front of him. Its name was Jianfeng, and it was a swordsman. In addition to possessing numerous skills, it had 500,000 faith power and a lifespan of 800 years, currently being 150 years old. The familiar called its master by the name of God and said it needed a sword. The protagonist replied that this would not be a problem, accessing his system to the equipment option for deities. Meanwhile, he pondered that in recent days he had cultivated many locusts until his faith power reached 100 million. Therefore, he currently had 54 divine power points. The equipment was divided into 4 levels: common equipment, faith equipment, divine power equipment, and finally, deity equipment, each requiring a greater prerequisite to use. With this in mind, he decided to buy the Great Storm Sword, handing it to his familiar. He made the first test, delivering a blow to the ground that made several cuts in the air, but told his god that he still needed 3 more identical weapons to fully unleash his potential. This left Hanwoo stunned, as he needed 3 more of those swords, and just one cost 150 divine power points, which were not easy to obtain. Knowing this, and what is to come, with a battle likely involving 1,000 men of a demigod, the MC cannot afford to be careless, checking what else he can find in his system. At this moment, in the divine kingdom of Qinshuang, she is focused, channeling energy, while several electric birds gather around her, always keeping her eyes closed. All she can imagine is when she was younger and was drowning. Hanwoo ran without thinking twice and pulled her out of the water, giving her mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to save her. She opens her eyes at this moment, and remembering all of this makes her extremely embarrassed, saying that the MC is annoying and deserves to be squeezed to death, adding that she has a grandfather who is a true god and 23 demigod relatives, so she didn't need protection. At this moment, her system rings. It's a call from Hanwoo. She answers, already asking if he has changed his mind about being an obedient slave. He responds that he hasn't since, at the moment he just wants to borrow her divine power. She asks what he has that's special to offer in return. After all, the familiars he showed in the fight are trash, and he shouldn't think he's someone just because he defeated Jungbin, making it clear that she found the explosive grasshoppers to be worthless trash. After all these insults, the MC simply apologizes for the inconvenience and ends the call. She panics because she has no idea why she said all that since the words just jumped out of her mouth, and, dying of fear that there was a misunderstanding, she decides to call him back. Hanwoo answers, asking if there are more insults she wants to say. Embarrassed, she just asks how much he wants from her and requests the account number. After getting this help from her friend, he provides more swords for his familiar, saying that he risked everything buying these countless swords, so he hopes, from the bottom of his heart, that it's worth it. The next day, in the classroom, voices of students could be heard saying that the MC is crazy to show up there and apparently isn't afraid of the 1,000-man army of the demigod. Another one wants to see if he'll stay so calm after his core is violated. Hanwoo observes everyone talking about this, and, apparently, they all already know what's going to happen and are clearly hoping it all goes wrong. At this moment, Qin Shuang enters the room, saying that now it makes sense why he called the day before, since it's to compete against a demigod. But she advises him to give up on this effort because even a legion of 1,000 men from a demigod is enough to ensure he can't do anything. He smiles and says that, in any case, he has no other choice. She responds that he does have a choice. He just needs to become her slave. After all, Her family has a true god and 23 demigods, so she could easily talk to Jungbin's parents to stop this. He turns around, thanking her for the offer but declining, going to prepare to face the demigod's 1,000-man legion. A person, watching from afar, becomes furious at how Qin Shuang treats the MC so well, and all they wish for at the moment is for him to die. At this moment, a teacher opens the classroom door with Jungbin's parents and points forward, showing who this Hanwoo is. Mrs. Du immediately becomes furious, calling him a bastard for destroying her son's core. John Lin asks her to calm down because they can't break the school's rules. The teacher asks Hanwoo to come to the front since they can't waste the precious time of the Zhang family, but he smiles, saying he wants to wait for the principal to have a witness. Lei Tian says that such a small matter isn't worthy of the principal's witness, and that he himself is enough to witness what will happen, and asks him to comply quickly, or else things will get complicated. At this moment, Principal Shumei enters the room, asking the teacher who he is being disrespectful to in this way. He asks her not to worry, since he is dealing with a small matter and taking the opportunity to discipline his students. She reminds him not to forget that he is a teacher at a respected school and not a guard dog for a demigod, making that very clear. The students' parents are satisfied with the principal's presence and ask if they can begin. She asks Hanwoo if he's ready, and he, full of confidence, replies that he is. Janlin wastes no time and plays his invasion card. The MC also begins his journey to the kingdom, immediately encountering several gazes directed at him. These are the gazes of fierce wolves. A student watching on the big screen notices that the wolf cavalry, led by a cavalry captain, has power beyond the ordinary. Another boy responds that this wolf cavalry is a combination of green orcs and dire wolves, and they also have a combination of high-level equipment, meaning that Hanwoo is finished. The wolf army prepares to face the MC, as does Janlin, overflowing with immense power as he calls him a bastard for destroying his son's divine core, and for that reason, he will pay with blood. Qin Shuang observes the troops used by the man, and the wolf cavalry is clearly counted as 2 units. Originally, they said they would send a legion of 1,000 men, but at the moment, there are 2,000 combat units, which is a major cheat. The principal remains silent since there is nothing she can do about it. The wolves advance on their master's command, just as the explosive grasshoppers also appear in favor of the MC, impressing some students. After all, there are 7 million elite grasshoppers, and they find it strange, since the day before there were only 20,000 left, having no idea how it was possible to cultivate so many in such a short time. It's almost frightening. Another says it won't make a difference since he's facing the elite of the elite, which are the mounted wolves. And unfortunately, there's nothing that can be done. Several explosions begin to happen, and they realize that millions of grasshoppers were sacrificed for nothing, since only a few mounted riders were slightly injured. Letian says that, indeed, Hanwoo is talented, but he has encountered an obstacle he won't be able to overcome. Otherwise, he might have made a name for himself at the school. Another student finds the unfolding of the fight strange and asks everyone to look closely at the screen. A giant cloud appears in the sky, surrounding the wolves, and it begins to rain explosive grasshoppers, scaring the monsters. The explosions from these grasshoppers were colossal, wiping out all the wolves within the blast radius. Qin Shuang is impressed by what she's seeing and asks what the hell is going on. After all, what kind of grasshopper is this that causes such a powerful explosion that it shoots magma into the air? The principal looks back and asks if there is any student or teacher who has the ability to detect the grasshoppers to provide accurate information about them. A young man uses his power and says that those are evolved elite forms of the explosive grasshoppers. Sumei is pleased to hear this and says it was an excellent job by her student. Jianlin, however, is unfazed by so little and asks if they really believe they can destroy his cavalry with so little, and orders his monsters to use their supernatural powers. With this, the leader howls, overflowing with powerful energy, as do the other wolves, who begin to blow a blue wind, thus creating the penetrating aura of ice to successfully counter the explosions. A student says that in the end, a demigod is a demigod, and logically wouldn't be defeated with so little, even admitting that the elite forms of the explosive grasshoppers are truly powerful, and says it's a shame that only 500,000 grasshoppers remain, and to make matters worse, they are all exhausted. Jianlin, determined to show what true fear is, says he will completely destroy the MC's core, and, with that, he will be expelled from school, reaching rock bottom, and orders his wolves to run and completely destroy Hanwoo's core. The principal turns around, saying that unfortunately, it's over. However, someone in the room asks what that divine form in the MC's core is. This catches Qin Shuang's attention, and she looks to see what it is. She only sees the wolves staring at a shadow, and upon looking closer, she notices that it is a familiar. One of the students asks if those aren't the storm swords that cost 50 divine powers, so 4 would cost 200, and the math doesn't add up since Hanwoo is an orphan and shouldn't be rich enough to buy these weapons. The principal explains that this is Jian Feng, who belongs to a clan with extraordinary life forms. A student says that it probably doesn't make a difference anymore. After all, they are facing the army of a demigod, and the cavalry captain will likely deal with that warrior while the rest of the wolves destroy the core. She reflects more on what she's seeing, and, judging by the appearance of that familiar, it's not an extraordinary life form, but rather a genuine heroic life form. Jianlin is also surprised by what he's seeing. After all, in his entire life fighting for decades, he only managed to produce one heroic form. So how could a high school student have achieved such a feat? He orders his wolves to destroy the core immediately, because after doing so, he will be able to capture this heroic life form for himself. Jian Feng begins to gather energy in his eyes, and prepares as several mounted wolves are coming his way. However, they are all repelled with his level 3 ability, Storm Cuts, and he also launches others into the air, using his level 1 ability, Whirlwind. A monster uses its freezing breath, and with that, it manages to freeze the familiar's feet. The wolves take the opportunity to attack, but he simply raises his 4 swords and activates his Iron Cut ability, creating an energy circle in the air that becomes increasingly powerful until it activates, causing a massive hole in the area and destroying everything around. The students are surprised because they didn't imagine a familiar could have so much power. Meanwhile, Jian Feng simply stands before the defeated wolves. Jianlin starts to get worried about the situation and asks the wolf cavalry captain to defeat the enemy. The monster positions itself and, overflowing with enormous power, prepares for battle. Suddenly, a voice asks if the demigod really intends to break the promise. He turns around and notices that the director is present and immediately responds that no, he would never dare do that, and asks the cavalry captain to retreat, along with the entire army. The director looks at the MC, and immediately, Jian Feng steps in front, leaving him surprised to see this scene. After all this confusion, still at school, the principal says that Hanwoo did a good job, but he can't relax just because he has a heroic life form, as despite being powerful, they are not invincible. He hears this, and says that he has a request to make. She asks what it would be. He says that he would like to change classes, leaving the teacher surprised by this, apologizing to him for not paying much attention, but promising to teach well from now on, and also receiving a significant amount of resources for daily practice, so he asks for a chance to correct these mistakes. He says, this thinking that clearly this student will become strong and enter a university, so he himself will receive incredible rewards for having helped. However, it's no use since the MC responds that he doesn't want that. His only desire is to change classes. The principal explains that he can't just change classes as he wishes since the school has its own regulations, and says that if he insists so much on it, he must pass the test assigned by the school, and if he succeeds, She herself will help him with the change. He accepts the test and says he will do as she instructs. Qin Shuang immediately shouts that she would also like to apply for this test. The teacher feels embarrassed and asks his student that if she doesn't like something about her teacher, she can speak up, but it's not necessary to go so far as to want to change classes. She replies that she has no dissatisfaction, she just doesn't want to stay there anymore. Xiaolong also stands up, telling the principal that he would like to take this test. Letian asks the class monitor what he is doing. He thanks for the help he's received so far, but he doesn't want to stay in that class anymore. He also turns to Qin Shuang, imagining that he can't let anyone else have her. The principal informs them that she will prepare the test for the following day. Outside the school, Qin Shuang runs up to the MC, asking how on earth he managed to obtain a heroic life form. He says that this matter is none of her concern, but she responds that it is. After all, he owes 150 divine power points, and if he cannot pay it back, he must become a slave to settle the debt. So the least she is entitled to know is how he acquired a heroic life form. He makes it clear that if she wants to collect the debt, he will pay 5 divine power points as interest. But if she wants to know about the heroic life form, unfortunately, she will remain in the dark. He says this and teleports away, leaving her furious. Inside his divine kingdom, the MC consults his troops and notes that he has 1 billion common grasshoppers, 1 million explosive grasshoppers, and 30,000 detonating grasshoppers, feeling a bit concerned if this will be enough for the class change test. At that moment, Jian Feng appears, informing him that the wolf cavalry is hiding inside the mines, and asks if he should destroy them immediately. This makes him think that indeed, many wolves escaped, and that this army inside his divine kingdom could be a problem, but killing them directly would be a great waste. With this in mind, he orders his familiar to capture the cavalry and ensure they are kept alive. 2 hours pass, and he returns with all the wolves tied up. The system asks if he would like to sacrifice 1 billion grasshoppers and 24 wolf cavalry units. He selects yes and activates his sacrifice ability. This sacrifice grants him a wick, a furnace artifact, and 3 watchtowers. He notices that the wick is indeed good, but how on earth would the grasshoppers handle it? The same goes for the furnace and watchtowers, and he thinks that, unfortunately, none of these items are interesting to him. At this moment, he remembers that he captured a few hundred dwarves in his battle against Zheng Bin, and wonders what happened to them, activating his god's eyes. The dwarves are currently working and notice their master's eye watching them, causing them to thank their god for the wonderful life he has granted them. He realizes that after capturing the dwarves, he ordered them to mine, and definitely, mining and equipment crafting are the dwarves' talents, while the fool, Zheng Bin, forced them to fight. Knowing this, he imagines they have the talent to craft equipment and, without a doubt, will be very useful in the furnace. He sends them there and asks them to forge the best equipment possible. The dwarves are surprised, as the gods have sent a divine gift. Meanwhile, the teachers are gathered. Litian explains that everyone is already aware of the class change test that 3 students will take, and that the school has given authority for everyone to create something. One teacher says he has nothing to say except thank you, as they are giving away 3 of the best students as a gift. He says he doesn't care about the tests for 2 of the students, but demands that Hanwu's test be raised to the maximum level since he hates a student who doesn't respect the teachers, and asks all his colleagues to please make this happen. The teachers agree to help, while Litian is just furious about being reprimanded by the principal, in addition to having his semester salary cut. The next day, already in the classroom, the teacher presents the 3 envelopes containing each student's test. Xiaolong and Qin Shuang take their envelopes, as does the MC, who is surprised to read that his evaluation test is at level 10, requiring him to defend against 10,000 foreign invaders. The principal asks the teacher if he would like to reconsider Hanwu's absurd test, but he responds that this was a decision made by all the teachers together. The MC asks the principal not to worry, as Letian is eager to see his abilities in action. This irritates him, prompting him to say that he should not regret it later. Qin Shuang once again asks him to become her slave, and if he does, she will ensure that absolutely no one at that school dares to intimidate him again. He thanks her for the kindness and says they will see each other after the test. She replies that it's fine, calling him ungrateful. Meanwhile, Xiaolong is eager to see the MC make a fool of himself in this test. The test begins with thousands of goblins appearing in front of him. The people watching on the big screen comment that they heard Hanwu's test is the hardest of the three and say it's well-deserved for having offended Professor Liu. The MC is not pleased, considering that Letian can't even be called a man for putting so many fire-resistant goblins against him. The professor, on the other hand, claims this is for his student to learn a lesson, as 10,000 red goblins should be more than enough to destroy the divine kingdom, and he makes it clear to other students that there is no hatred between teachers and students, and that after this small test, Hanwu will certainly understand the good intentions behind the teachers. Meanwhile, the principal is rooting for him. The MC begins his attack, sending his legion of grasshoppers into battle, but the goblins simply summon their fireballs and launch them, exploding all the grasshoppers. The MC already anticipated that mere common grasshoppers would not inflict any damage and decides to use his explosive grasshoppers for the attack, scaring the red goblins. Then, numerous explosions occur, eliminating 400 goblins at once. Qinshuang and Xiaolong return from their tests, and she runs to the principal, asking how the MC is doing. Shumei says the situation is not very good, as grasshoppers are inferior creatures, and even if well cultivated, they still wouldn't reach the top. Hanwu, seemingly calm, continues to send more and more explosive grasshoppers, eliminating another 3,000 red goblins at once, while the rest desperately try to reach the crystal to destroy it. A student comments that, unfortunately, it's over this time. After all, he may have a heroic life form, but there's nothing he can do against 6,500 red goblins. Qin Shuang also laments, as an insane army like that will destroy her classmates' core. The principal immediately contacts the MC, asking that if he can't hold out, he should just admit defeat, as there's no shame in it, and with time, he can rise again. He makes it clear that he's already decided to change classes and will attempt it until his last breath, adding that he hasn't lost yet. He says this while his familiar delivers numerous blows to the approaching goblins, finishing them off one by one. The goblins become enraged, using their roars and launching their fireballs, causing countless explosions on the ground where Jian Feng was, making them believe it's unfortunately over, as the familiar must have suffered serious damage in these attacks. The professor is the most excited, saying that Hanwu must learn the lesson this time, until a student asks them to look closely. An army of dwarves emerges in the middle of the battle. They position themselves asking to protect their god, leaving the red goblins frightened, as an army of dwarves is attacking everyone. The students watching are surprised, asking if this isn't the same faction Zheng Bin had, and, with all this talent, Hanwu must be at the very least in the top 10 of the year. With the dwarves' victory over the red goblins, the MC celebrates, having won even while at a disadvantage. The principal and Qin Shuang are also pleased with the result, unlike the professor, who is irritated by this victory. With the return of the three students, all the teachers want to recruit them for their respective classes, making it clear that they will provide the maximum resources possible for each one. Xiaolong can only imagine going wherever Qin Shuang goes, regardless of which class it will be. The MC is bothered by something, asking the principal why his test was so difficult. She explains that the level of each student's test was chosen collectively by all the teachers of that grade. He says he understands and kindly asks to check each vote. She agrees and hands over the summary of opinions about the class transfer test evaluation. All the teachers are dissatisfied with Letian, as it was a disaster supporting him against the student. Hanwu goes to two teachers who clearly voted fairly and asks what resources they would provide if he joined one of them. The first teacher says that this test made it clear the MC's ability to cultivate dwarves, and if he joins his class, he will provide an army of 10,000 dwarves. With this, he will easily make it into the top 10 and have a bright future. The other teacher says that central family cultivation is the most important and has several resources on hand that will be useful in cultivating insects. So, if he joins his class, he will fully assist in the life transition of grasshopper species. With that decided, Hanwoo tells Professor Tianwen that he would like to join his class. The girl, knowing the MC will go there, says she also wants to join that professor's class. The same goes for Xiaolong, as he will go wherever the girl goes. The professor is delighted that so many students decided to join his class, and that's how you win the Outstanding Teacher Award. Besides that, it is great that so many good students are joining his class. He presents a gift to the MC as thanks for deciding to join his class. He notices it is a hive construction letter that occupies a square kilometer of land and can hatch 1 million insectoids annually. This makes him happy, as it was literally tailor-made for him, and he begins to think about his future strategies, as after setting up the hive in his divine realm, he will be able to bless it with 2 level 1 relics. The hive will perfectly amplify the power of both relics and, consequently, the eggs within it. Thus, he will be able to obtain 1 million grasshoppers every year. With this in mind, he thanks the professor for the generosity, and the professor says there is no need to thank him. Just deliver the best results, and that will be a reward in itself. The principal calls everyone's attention, saying that the test of the day is a simple test, so there's no need to take it so seriously, but that in 7 days, the exam will cover the entire school, as it will determine the allocation of resources among classes in the future. After that, within the MC's divine realm, he checks his situation and currently has 2 million grasshoppers, 5,000 self-destructing grasshoppers, 300 explosive grasshoppers, 52 dwarves, and Jianfeng, which is a heroic life form. He worries when analyzing his situation, as with this level of strength, participating in the exam that will cover 7 days will probably result in the worst score among all students, and he definitely needs to find a way to increase the number of grasshoppers as well as strengthen the ones he already has. He also notes that the name of the dwarves is different, now being Redforge dwarves, and flies off as he wants to see with his own eyes what this means. Upon arriving where they are gathered, he notices that the dwarves are indeed different, now being an elite creature with various talents and extremely higher power. This makes him think how great it would be if they were from his main family, as he can only use growth acceleration more frequently with his main family. After that, 4 days pass, and with 7.3 billion grasshoppers currently, he hopes to get something good this time. Activating his life sacrifice ability on all the grasshoppers, he wonders what he will gain this time. The system gives the first option, saying, Sacred Item Level 2, Law of Gluttony. Once charged in the Divine Realm Core, the main race gains the ability to eat voraciously. If the total energy of the consumed food exceeds its own energy by 1,000 times, it can complete its own evolution. The second option says, Hero Model. Giving this to an extraordinary life form can help it be promoted to a heroic life form. And finally, the third option will give a bit of divinity. The MC is pleased as these are definitely all good options, making it hard to choose any, and he thinks about the 3 options. The first option could transform various grasshoppers into elite life forms, but he may not be able to afford it. The second could make a life form evolve to the heroic version, and the third option would give him power equivalent to 100 billion faith, something like winning the lottery. After much thought, he decides to choose the first option. 3 days pass, and Hanwoo is unsure if what is in front of him is a gigantic grasshopper or a gigantic lizard, declaring that it will be the explosive plus grasshopper. Later, at school, Qin Shuang goes to him asking if he has considered becoming their slave. as he has no support or resources, making it impossible to stand out among the various demigods, and says she really thinks his grasshoppers are strong, but in the end, they are not a big deal. She also says she thinks the dwarves are cool, but that they are not part of the main family. The MC thanks her for her kindness and says he will find out all of this only after the exam. She does not like this at all and comments that he is driving her crazy. Xiaolong just watches from his desk, wishing that the MC would disappear completely from Qin Shuang's sight. The professor explains the importance of this exam for the future in terms of resource distribution and asks everyone to give their best, making it clear that he has several sacred relics, domain lands, core fragments, among other resources, available if needed. He also emphasizes the importance of reading the rules of this exam carefully. The first stage is the elimination system. Next comes the ranking system, where everyone will receive an evaluation of the same difficulty. Those who fail will be directly eliminated from the school. The MC notes that being expelled from the school upon elimination is very harsh, but the rewards must be excellent. The top 100 will receive a divine territory. The top 50 will receive a level 1 sacred relic. The top 30 will receive a creation card. The top 20 will receive a first grade building. The top 10 will receive a divine weapon of the student's choice. The top 5 will receive a transcendent seed that can accelerate an elite life form. The top 3 will have their divine core evolved, and the first place will win a point of divinity. Reading all this excites him, as he will fight until the end for these rewards. With all these explanations, the professor says the general exam is starting, warning that the first round of the general exam elimination test will begin soon, so everyone should prepare. The MC begins to head toward his divine realm until he teleports completely, asking all his family members to prepare for battle. He notices his enemies approaching and realizes they are flesh and blood puppets, definitely an ordinary life form, with elite level combat power, as well as extremely thick and resistant skin, but fortunately, they are slow. With that, he orders 50,000 grasshoppers to explode in magma form, causing several explosions among the monsters, which only roar in response. He gets excited, as the smell of roasted meat is strong, and wonders if he could feed his grasshoppers with those monsters, asking the red goblin dwarves to recover the bodies from the battle. After a while, he notices that there are great supplements there and is confused if this isn't a test. As if it continues like this, the upcoming exams will be intense. The teachers watch on the big screen, lamenting that another student they were optimistic about has been eliminated. Tianwen says that 20 of the eliminated students were from his class, reducing it to a third. Another professor says that his situation is worse, as half of his students were eliminated, and questions if the level isn't too high. The principal explains that she had the 3 vice principals compete for positions with the Demon Abyss civilization at the forefront, so there must be a reason for choosing the flesh demon puppet as an invader, and since they are demigods, it isn't interesting to speculate. Tianwen is excited, as his student turned everyone's nightmare into food for himself, and asks if there are still any relatives who can resist the toxins in the meat and blood of those demons. Another professor is curious about this, as if the grasshoppers can ignore the toxins of the demonic puppets. It is a great discovery worthy of research. Li Tian responds that it is just luck, as in terms of strength, those grasshoppers are trash. Tianwen makes it clear that luck is also part of strength, and definitely those grasshoppers have been well cultivated, so they are not weak, stating that, despite being an extraordinary life form, it still crossed the threshold of extraordinary life forms. Li Tian asks if these extraordinary life forms are not, in the end, just grasshoppers. After all, their combat power is generally equal to that of goblins, which are common life forms, and even worse than them in other aspects. The professor makes it clear that his colleague is being one-sided, as he is comparing the deficiencies of the grasshoppers with the advantages of another race. For example, grasshoppers can expand their population 100 or 1,000 times a year, Asking if goblins can do the same, he says he will not discuss useless things and only wants to see the results, proposing a bet that, in the end, Liumo's score will be higher than Hanwu's. Tianwen responds that the MC will definitely have the best scores. Letian says that all the teachers are there as witnesses, and the result will cost the loser 5 points of divinity. He says this thinking the bet is already won. After all, Liumo is his nephew, and definitely, Tianwen will not provide the same resources. On the big screen, it is possible to see that after the eliminations, 430 candidates were approved, and the number of students selected for the exam is 300. Lichen says that there are only useless bastards, as there are still 130 people left who passed. Another professor asks him not to blame the students, as it is not uncommon to fail due to the level of difficulty. The ranking test will begin, with various skeleton warriors appearing. The teachers ask if that's really all there is, as it seems more like a giveaway. The MC gets excited, as he has 1 billion hungry baby grasshoppers, and suddenly, so many skeleton soldiers appear, it must be a joke. He orders his grasshoppers to completely devour that army. The skeletons, despite having glowing eyes, had nothing they could do. 2 hours pass and he feels relieved, as it was a great appetizer. However, the second wave of skeleton soldiers begins, but are immediately exploded by the self-destructing grasshoppers. He observes that if the lava continues to rise higher and higher, these skeleton soldiers will not be able to swim through it, increasing the temperature more and more. With this in mind, he asks the red goblin dwarves to pour out the melted lava from the great furnace. They immediately obey, killing all the skeleton soldiers as they come out of the portal. One of the professors is surprised, as Hanwu is definitely coming up with great ideas. Tianwen says that it is obvious after all, he is in the best possible class. Li Tian is not intimidated, as the MC has just reached the 7th wave, but Liumo is also at this level. At this moment, in Liumo's divine realm, he is positioned with his arrow towers, lightning towers, fire towers, among various other things, imagining that this student must really come from a rich family. The professor is excited, as he invested many resources in his nephew to ensure that he will be in first place this year, until he hears another professor asking to see Qin Shuang's divine realm. Observing her realm, he notes that there are 100 lightning towers, as well as 300,000 elite thunder natural life forms, and 100 giant ancestral trees. This impresses everyone, as her family is truly powerful. Even many demigods do not have as many trump cards as she does, and there are even rumors that the girl is among the top 3 in the series. Li Tian is furious, as he knows all this is because of Hanwu, and says that the boy will pay dearly for this. After all this, the 10th wave ends, leaving only 18 candidates, and he announces that the 11th wave will begin soon, making it clear that the level of difficulty will increase drastically. A shadow emerges from a red portal, leaving everyone in disbelief that this is a heroic life form. The monster in question is the bone collector of the skeleton race, and it is indeed a heroic life form. It continues walking, and as it passes by, all the bones on the ground begin to tremble, while a pink aura surrounds it. It raises its staff and creates a completely gigantic skeleton being. The bone collector raises its hand, asking its new creation to attack with all its might. The enormous skeleton attacks, saying it only wants to kill, and stomps on the ground, causing a huge explosion, leaving the professors surprised, as only 3 minutes have passed, but 8 students have already given up due to the excessive difficulty. Letian is annoyed, asking why the giant skeleton is so small in Hanwu's divine realm, and starts accusing him of cheating. Indeed, the skeleton generated in this realm was quite insignificant, even trembling with fear. Tianwen explains that the reason is simple. The bone fragments in the MC's divine realm were burned to ashes by the lava, so the bone collector did not have enough resources to create such a large being, leaving only the bone collector, who is disintegrated by the iron-cutting style of the familiar Jianfeng. The MC begins to yawn, insinuating that it is too easy as he has just passed the 11th invasion wave. The professor does not accept this result and accuses him again of cheating, insinuating that the student should already know what the tests would be. Tianwen asks what evidence he has for this accusation. The professor accuses him of protecting his own student, saying he will report him to the educational authorities, making it clear that everyone there is sensitive. But Hanwoo's unusual fighting style is suspicious after all. Who would think of cleaning the battlefield after defeating the skeleton soldiers? If he did that, it's because he knew that eventually the bone collector would appear needing bones to summon its greatest creation, and he makes it clear that he strongly suspects that Hanwoo already knew about the tests in advance, which is a cheat that the school should investigate. The principal makes it clear that the content of the exam was decided by the Supreme Director before leaving, and that even she did not know the content of the tests, asking the professor if he really thinks the Supreme Director would have done something so stupid. He panics and says no, that he must have been wrong, and that Hanwoo defeated the bone controller by sheer luck, but insists that even if there is no cheating, his scores are very unfair compared to the other students. She asks if Letian, as a demigod, is aware of how ridiculous these words are. After all, the civilization of the divine realm has never been about justice, but rather about survival, and one cannot compare the scores of anyone with anyone else. Highlighting the justice that the professor mentioned, she says that he himself used his authority in favor of his nephew, providing him with resources. Knowing this makes Tianwen angry, as it seems the professor is favoring his own nephew with a colossal amount of resources. And now, it makes sense why the bet was made, though it's a shot in the foot, since the MC passed the wave while his nephew is facing great difficulties. In the divine realm of Liumo, he notes that he is facing a colossal challenge, as his army has been defeated, and says that he gives up on the test. Tianwen informs that the results of the exam are out, as Hanwoo has passed and his nephew has failed, asking if he will pay the 5 divinity points, reminding him that the other professors are witnesses. He hands over his card, making it clear that he will eventually recover the points he lost. An hour passes, and now there are 3 people left to face the 13th wave: Hanwoo, Qin Shuang, and Huang Fei. The professors are eager to see who will take first place among the 3. In Huang Fei's divine realm, he gives up on the 14th invasion, as the level has become absurd. Qin Shuang, reaching the 16th invasion wave, also gives up. The principal is pleased to see Hanwoo in first place, continuing strong with his explosive locusts in the 20th invasion wave, causing explosions throughout the battlefield. A giant skeleton is generated as the smaller ones are killed, but the familiar Jian Feng appears with its annihilation technique, cutting the giant into pieces. 15 minutes pass, and the system announces that the 21st invasion will begin, making it clear that the difficulty level will increase dramatically and asking everyone to be prepared. He gets excited, as it seems a great challenge is coming. He notices that a colossal portal has appeared before him and is surprised, as it is much larger than normal. Emerging from within, sitting is the Supreme Lady of the Skeletons, and, as the system made clear, the difficulty level has indeed increased dramatically. That's all, folks. If you enjoy the video, subscribe and hit the bell. Thanks.